Hello everyone. The topic for today is congestive cardiac failure. First of all, what do you understand by congestive cardiac failure? It occurs when the heart is unable to pump sufficiently so as to maintain the blood flow to meet the needs of the body. Okay? So heart is unable to pump sufficiently. So there are two main types basically. Heart failure due to left ventricular dysfunction and heart failure when there is normal ejection fraction. So heart failure is a common condition and potentially a fatal condition. So it is a clinical syndrome that results from any structural or functional impairment of ventricular filling or ejection of blood. So here this is your normal heart. This is the condition in which there is heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. Okay. So the ejection fraction is decreased in this case. Whereas in this case, the ejection fraction is preserved. Okay. Yet the heart muscles are able to pump the blood. So the ejection fraction in this case is preserved. So there are two types basically: heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. So these are the signs and symptoms when a person is suffering with heart failure. Basically, there will be coughing, tiredness, shortness of breath. There is pleural effusion, that is fluid in around the lungs into the pleura. Okay. Swelling in the abdomen, that is ascites. The pumping action of the heart, it goes weaker and weaker. So there is accumulation of fluid. There is pulmonary edema, that is fluid in the lungs. Okay. And even swelling in ankles and legs, swelling of the limbs. Same thing, shortness of breath, swelling of feet and legs. There's lack of energy. There's difficulty in sleeping, that is dyspneic. Okay. Difficulty sleeping at night due to breathing problems, due to dyspnea. The patient is unable to sleep properly. There's swollen or tender abdomen, that is ascites. There's loss of appetite. There's cough with sputum. There's increased urination at night. There's confusion and impaired memory. Okay. So the patient of congestive cardiac failure will present to you with such signs and symptoms. So American College of Cardiology and American Heart Association, they have given a classification, and similarly the New York Heart Association. So this is the classification of congestive heart failure. Okay. So this is according to the functional, this is the functional class, NYHA functional classification. Okay. And this is according to the structural damage. Okay. If there is any structural damage to the heart. Okay. So in stage A, there is a risk for heart disease, but there is no actual structural disease. Stage B, there is structural disease, but no prior current symptoms of heart failure, but you will get some structural disease. Stage C is structural disease with past or current symptoms of heart failure, and D is end stage disease. Okay. So the NYHA classification, there is a functional classification. Class 1, there is no physical limitations to the activity. This stage, this class 2 is slight limitation of physical activity in the form of moderate exertion. Then class 3 is marked limitation of physical activity in the form of even at minimal exertion. And class 4, it is inability to exert because there are symptoms of heart failure even at rest. So in class 4, there are symptoms even at rest, whereas in the above classes, there are no symptoms at rest. They will be only on exertion, whether moderate or minimal exertion. Same thing, this is the NYHA classification. Okay. So there is no limitation of physical activity. Ordinary physical activity will not cause any symptoms. Class 2, there is slight limitation. Comfortable at rest, even class 3, but there is marked limitation, but comfortable at rest. And class 4, there is severe limitation and symptoms are present even at rest. So heart failure, it is a vicious circle. Okay. So what happens in heart failure? Heart is unable to pump the blood effectively, is unable to meet the demands of the body. So there is decreased cardiac output. Once the cardiac output is decreased, renal perfusion pressure is decreased. So there will be neurohormonal activation. Okay, like there will be release of renin, all the angiotensin. Okay. Then there is water and salt. Because of this neurohormonal activation, there is water and salt retention, and there is vasoconstriction. Okay. And this is all this retention of salt and water will add up to the congestion of the lungs, and again this cycle will vicious circle will repeat. Again this salt and water retention, vasoconstriction, again this is also responsible for again further decreasing the cardiac output. So this is how this is the vicious circle. So for this, in this case, so what will be the drugs that will be required? So here you will require some diuretics because there is salt and water retention. There is neurohormonal activation. There are angiotensin that is released. Then there are some natriuretic peptides. So you require to inhibit those uh, neurohormones. So here you require to give some ACE inhibitors, ARBs. Then you require to give some inhibitors of the natriuretic peptides. Then there is also one component is vasoconstriction. So for vasoconstriction, you require to give some vasodilators, obviously. Okay. So vasodilators, even they have a role. Again, there is neurohormonal activation, so you require the cardiac workload is increased, therefore you require to give some beta blockers. Okay, and even you require to give some inotropic drugs naturally, because as the cardiac output is decreased, these are the drugs that should be given, right? So you require to give some inotropic agents which will increase the pumping action of the heart. So basically these all are the drugs that will be required for the treatment. So in the management, basically the main aim of our treatment, it focuses on first is to improve the symptoms, second to prevent the progression of the disease. Okay, improve the symptoms and prevent the progression. So the treatment includes even lifestyle management also, the changes in lifestyle. Okay, and next of course are the pharmacological modalities. So in acute decompensated heart failure, the immediate goal is to re-establish adequate perfusion and oxygen delivery to end organs. So you require to ensure that airway, breathing and circulation are adequate. Okay. Whereas in chronic management, it is to the main goal of treatment with chronic heart failure is the prolongation of life, the prevention of acute decompensation and reduction of symptoms, allowing for greater activity. Okay. So basically is to maintain a good condition of that patient who have heart failure. Okay, so as to prolong the life of that patient. So the treatment strategies provide significant improvement. First is the relief of symptoms, exercise tolerance and decrease in the likelihood of hospitalization or death. So relief of congestive symptoms, that is low output symptoms, whenever there is congestion in the heart, okay, there is pump failure, the heart is not able to pump properly. So it gives rise to congestive symptoms. So your role is to give relief from the congestion. And the second aim is to arrest or reverse the disease progression and prolongation of survival. Okay. So basically the drugs for these are ACE inhibitors, vasodilators, beta blockers, diuretics, inotropic drugs. Okay. And for relief or for the reversal of disease progression or prolongation of survival, the drugs are ACE inhibitors, beta blockers, and aldosterone antagonists. So majority of all these classes of drugs you have already studied in your previous lectures. What will be, we'll just go through all these drugs quickly, and then we'll discuss in detail about this inotropic agent, basically that is digoxin, which is a cardiac glycoside. Okay, rest of the drugs have already been covered in your previous lectures. Okay, so the therapeutic strategy naturally is a reduction of workload, control of excessive salt and water which gets retained, so that you have to control all this excess salt and water, and improvement of pumping performance. So workload can be reduced by physical emotional rest, treatment of obesity, you have to assist circulation, there is vasodilator therapy. Okay, and you have to control the excess salt in water, that is low sodium diet, you have to give diuretics and also some mechanical removal of fluid if required. Then improvement of pumping performance, these are the cardiac glycosides and other positive inotropic agents like dopamine, dobutamine. Okay, and the last will be the pacemaker if required. Okay, so the drugs basically that will be dealing are ACE inhibitors, aldosterone antagonists, vasodilators, diuretics, beta blockers, digoxin, which is a cardiac glycoside, and other cardiac inotropic agents, that is dobutamine, dopamine, milrinone. Okay. So these are the drugs that we'll be studying in this heading for drugs for congestive cardiac failure. Okay. We'll just quickly go through all these drugs. First is ACE inhibitors. These are the first line therapy for people with heart failure, should include ACE inhibitors or ARBs. Okay. ARBs are given if the person develops a long-term cough as a side effect of the ACE inhibitors. So basically they're recommended for all grades of congestive heart failure that we have seen in the start of this lecture, the various grades of CH. Okay. So use of medicines from this class are associated with improved survival and quality of life in people with heart failure, basically by causing vasodilatation and retarding or preventing ventricular hypertrophy, fibrosis, and remodeling. Okay, so it plays really a very important role in the treatment, in the management of CHF. So drugs in this class are captopril, fosinopril, ramipril, lisinopril. So here you can see just the diagrammatic representation, like what happens whenever the cardiac output is decreased. Okay, there is decreased sodium delivery, there is sympathetic stimulation, hypertension, that will stimulate kidney, and there is release of renin from kidney. So this renin will convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 gets converted to angiotensin 2 by angiotensin converting enzyme. And this angiotensin 2 is responsible for cardiac and vascular hypertrophy, that is the remodeling part. The systemic vasoconstriction, there's increased blood volume. It is also responsible, it stimulates adrenocortex, thereby releasing aldosterone, and this is responsible for sodium and water retention, and this eventually increases the blood volume again. Okay, so all these, they play an important role. So this angiotensin 2 basically plays a very important role in the patients of CHF. So the drugs which inhibit this angiotensin converting enzyme and ultimately inhibit the formation of angiotensin 2 are really very important. Again, the same representation, diagrammatic representation you can see here. So basically what you are going to inhibit by ACE inhibitors is this angiotensin converting enzyme. So eventually what we'll get is it will also going to inhibit the vasoconstriction, the release of aldosterone. Naturally, all this, the further impact of this angiotensin 2 is inhibited. And here also you can see it inhibits the metabolism of bradykinin, and this bradykinin basically is responsible for vasodilation and decreased peripheral vascular resistance, and it ultimately decreases the blood pressure. Okay, so this is the importance of ACE inhibitors. So they reduce the arterial resistance, that is the afterload. They decrease the venous tension, that is preload is reduced, decrease aldosterone secretion, and a very important role again is of inhibition of cardiac and vascular remodeling. Okay, so these are the actions of these drugs which actually help in the patients of CHF. Adverse effects, you very well know the adverse effects. There's dry, irritating, persistent cough, angioedema, hyperkalemia, there's fetal toxicity. All these adverse effects are seen with ACE inhibitors. Okay, so these drugs, you have to be careful with these drugs. If you find any of such adverse effects, these drugs are contraindicated in pregnancy. You have to keep in mind. So the next class is angiotensin receptor blockers, that is ARBs. Okay. So the drugs in this class are losartan, candesartan, valsartan, telmisartan, irbesartan. This is the list of various drugs which comes under this class. So basically they are competitive antagonists. They are blockers at the receptors of angiotensin 2. So they also decrease vascular resistance. Basically what they will prevent the action of angiotensin 2. Similarly, like ACE inhibitors, they prevent the formation as such, and ARBs, they prevent the action of angiotensin 2. So they will decrease the vascular resistance, they will restore the tissue perfusion, they will decrease the afterload. So they will also decrease aldosterone production. Once the production of aldosterone is reduced, so sodium reabsorption is decreased, there is loss of water. Okay, so this also helps in CHF. The side effects will be hypertension, renal impairment, and hyperkalemia. So this is again the same diagrammatic representation of renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. In this, only one thing you can see here is about the atrial natriuretic peptide. Basically, this atrial natriuretic peptide, this inhibits the release of renin. So the further actions like the angiotensin and everything, and this further activities will be inhibited. And this atrial natriuretic peptide, and there is a brain natriuretic peptide, that is ANP and BNP. Basically these are released whenever there is sympathetic stimulation or cardiac distension, and this ANP is also responsible for increasing the GFR. So basically they inhibit renin release, and this further actions of angiotensin 2 are inhibited. So the first class, that is ACE inhibitors and ARBs, is done. Now comes the role of even vasodilators. Okay. Vasodilators, the main role is to decrease preload and afterload. So there are drugs which are used to reduce the preload and afterload. Okay. So if you decrease this preload and afterload, naturally the cardiac workload is decreased, and there will be better pumping of the heart so as to meet the demands of the body and to supply the blood to the vital organs. Okay. So you have preload reduction and afterload reduction. The first group is the nitrates. Nitrates, basically they cause pooling of blood in systemic capacitance vessel. So they will reduce the ventricular end diastolic pressure and volume. Okay. So it is indicated when CVP is raised and even in dilated cardiomyopathy. So preload reduction. Venodilate, nitrates, okay, pooling of blood into the systemic capacitance vessel. And afterload reduction, there are arteriolar dilators basically. They dilate the resistance vessels, the arteries. So here you have hydralazine, which dilates resistance arteries so that even weaker ventricular contraction is able to pump more blood. Okay, and again you have calcium channel blockers, basically DHP group, not the non-DHP like verapamil, diltiazem. They are not given. They cannot be given because they have nodal depressant effects. Okay, that you already have learned about this calcium channel blockers. So here you can use DHPs basically, which are arteriolar dilators. When the patient is also hypertensive patient, in those cases you can give this calcium channel blockers can be given. So this is just a diagrammatic representation, a picture basically which shows there is preload and afterload. The preload, basically what you understand by preload is the volume of blood in the ventricles which is at the end of the diastole. Okay, so there is end diastolic pressure which is increased whenever there is regurgitation from cardiac valves or there is hypovolemia, increased volume of blood. So there is increased load into the ventricle. So this is preload, and afterload, it is resistance that occurs to the left ventricle, okay, for the uh, pumping of the blood basically. Okay, so that is afterload, that is increased hypertension or whenever there is constriction of the vessels. So there will be more resistance. This will have to overcome more resistance to circulate the blood. Okay. So basically in those conditions there is vasodilators which play an important role. So in this vasodilators you have nitrates basically. Nitrates, you already know, they are metabolized to nitric oxide. They will activate guanylate cyclase, increase cyclic GMP, and there is relaxation of the vessels. Okay. So these are the vasodilator drugs. Side effects, there is headache, postural hypotension, dizziness. That is because of the headache is due to dilatation of intracranial vessels. Okay. So this is nitrate group. So in congestive cardiac failure, basically the role is it is going to reduce your preload, it is going to reduce your afterload. Okay, it is going to dilate all your resistance vessels and even capacitance vessels. Okay, so it is going to reduce your pre and afterload. The next class, that is diuretics. Okay, because we know as there is pumping, the failure of pumping action of the heart, it is not able to pump blood properly. So there will be congestion. The name itself suggests there is congestive cardiac failure. There is congestion in the body. Okay, and that is why you get all the symptoms like there is ascites, there is edema, then there is edema of the limbs, then there is pleural effusion, congestion of the lungs. Okay, so in that case it is important to give diuretics. You require to give the symptomatic relief to these patients. So here you'll give diuretics. Now diuretics, you know, there are various classes of diuretics. You have high ceiling diuretics, you have thiazides, you have potassium sparing diuretics. So high ceiling diuretics like furosemide, bumetanide, these are the diuretics of choice for mobilizing edema fluid. Okay, and there are also thiazides which are used in congestive heart failure. Basically, the role of these drugs is to decrease the preload and to improve ventricular efficiency by reducing the circulating volume. Basically, preload is reduced. Okay, and it is also going to remove the peripheral edema and what if congestion is there, like pulmonary congestion. So it is helpful in those conditions. Okay. So you have high ceiling diuretics, furosemide, bumetanide, torsemide, okay, and there are thiazides, hydrochlorothiazide, chlorothiazides. You already have dealt with this topic of diuretics, so we'll not go into the detail. Just the role of diuretics in CHF is to decrease the preload, to improve the ventricular efficiency, and to remove the peripheral edema and congestion, which whatever is present. Okay, so furosemide It provides rapid symptomatic relief even in acute left ventricular failure. Okay, it is a high serum diuretic. Loop diuretics and thiazides, all these drugs, they cause hypokalemia. That is the adverse effect of these diuretics like high serum diuretics and thiazides. So in that case, you can give potassium sparing diuretics which help in reducing the hypokalemia, okay, which is caused by these drugs. So potassium sparing diuretics, these are spironolactone, eplerenone, triamterene. Okay, these are potassium sparing diuretics. Means they will cause diuresis, but they will spare potassium. Okay. So potassium sparing diuretic aldosterone inhibition, basically. Here we'll just go through this diagram once again. Uh, what happens here is that whenever there is fall in blood pressure, there is kidney releases renin, and there is ultimately formation of angiotensin 2, which will cause vasoconstriction and rise in BP. And there is also release of aldosterone, which is responsible for salt and water retention, and this will also increase the blood pressure. Okay, so this is aldosterone. Okay, now there is a drug which inhibits this aldosterone, that is spironolactone. Okay, now we'll just go through this, how this aldosterone is responsible for sodium and water retention is that at the luminal side there is sodium channels. So what will happen? This aldosterone will cause absorption of sodium, okay, into the cell, and there is at the basolateral membrane there is this sodium potassium exchanges. So sodium is taken inside and there is potassium is pushed out, and then this through potassium there are potassium channels at this lumen, and this potassium is lost. Okay, so basically now what will happen when you give the drugs which are going to inhibit this action of aldosterone? So what will happen? There is no retention of sodium as such. So there is no loss of potassium because this exchange will also not take place. So there is this no loss of potassium, and then potassium will be retained. Okay. So aldosterone inhibition minimizes potassium loss, prevents sodium and water retention, and endothelial dysfunction and myocardial fibrosis. Okay, all these are prevented. It blocks the action of aldosterone at DCT, which there is a mineralocorticoid receptor, okay, at DCT which are blocked. So there is reduced sodium reabsorption, increased water excretion, and it is a potassium sparing agent. Okay, side effects, there can be hyperkalemia, hypotension. Now mainly with spironolactone, if you happen to see the adverse effect, there will be impotence and gynecomastia. Okay, because it blocks the mineralocorticoid receptor. Okay. Whereas there are another drug like eplerenone or triamterene, which is again a potassium sparing diuretic. They act at epithelial channels to prevent the loss of potassium. Okay, the sodium intake is blocked and it will prevent the loss of potassium, and thereby there is retention of potassium. So these are potassium sparing diuretics. Now the beta blockers, basically you have seen there is sympathetic stimulation, neurohormonal stimulation. Okay, the sympathetic nervous system gets stimulated. So these drugs, they act primarily by inhibiting the sympathetic nervous system. They increase the beta receptor sensitivity. There is upregulation of beta receptors. These drugs have antiarrhythmic properties. They have antioxidant properties. So basically these drugs are useful in this condition of CHF. Side effects you very well know, it can be bronchoconstriction, cardiac depression, bradycardia, hypoglycemia, fatigue, and cold extremities. However, bronchoconstriction should not be a problem whenever you are going to use cardioselective beta blocker, basically. Okay, so the examples of beta blockers that are being used in CHF, the cardioselective beta blockers are metoprolol, bisoprolol. Okay, so here you can see the cardiac contractility is decreased. Okay, so what will happen? The peripheral perfusion is decreased, and thereby there is sympathetic activation. Now, once there is sympathetic activation, what will happen? There will be desensitization of this beta adrenergic system. Okay, then there is apoptosis, necrosis, fibrosis. So all this cardiac remodeling thing starts because of the activation of the sympathetic nervous system. So this beta blockers, basically cardioselective beta blockers, what they will do, they will block all these effects of sympathetic activation. Okay, so these drugs will be helpful for the prolongation of survival of these patients. Okay, so this was about the initial drugs that can be used in the management. Now what we are left with are the inotropic agents. Okay, the basically you have will be dealing with digoxin and the other inotropic agents like dopamine, dobutamine. There is a one more class, it's phosphodiesterase inhibitors, that is milrinone, inamrinone. Okay, we'll just quickly go through these drugs in the next lecture. Thank you.